It's March 6th, 2023. This is Rook. Welcome to episode 244 of Rook. I'm Jian Ghomeshi. Hello to you from our Rook Studio in Toronto, Canada. Salam dostan aziz. Durud bar shoma. Thank you for tuning in wherever you are around the world. I hope you are doing well. Coming up today, Hushang Touzie, the great actor, producer, Iranian-American star. He has just done a new, I guess you call it a tele-play, a play that he has performed on Manoto television, and which is quite compelling. It's taking stories from the Shahnameh. It's kind of actually a play within a play. It's called Rustam is unaware of his son Sohrab's whereabouts, and it's basically an ode to the uprising, the revolution that's happening right now for freedom in Iran. But interestingly enough, it was written, he started writing it 5 years ago. So it's kind of prescient. Houshang Touzie joining us from Los Angeles in just a little bit. And it's my first chance to talk to him about being on Broadway in The Kite Runner, too, this past year. So look forward to that. And Peyman Salimi, our friend, the singer-songwriter, the music producer, the great guitarist. KNZ, you're a fan of Peyman Salimi, right?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Why are you a fan of Peyman Salimi?
I heard a song, I think like a few years ago, the song called Shap, and I loved it. I loved his like vocal arrangements.
The cover of the Farmaz Aslani song.
Yes, yes.
He's great. He's so great. You're right. He's got a great vocal, and he's kind of known in some ways as the producer or the guitarist, like you see him on stage with Ali Azimi, but his own stuff is great too. So Peyman Salimi is in Brussels. He's got a new album coming out in late April. So I guess the plan is, because we were talking about this before the show, he was sending over music. We're going to preview some of his new songs.
So excited about that.
Which are connected to the revolution as well. Peyman Salimi coming up in just a little bit, actually after Houshang Touzie, Paymon in Brussels. Yesterday, how was your weekend, KNZ?
It was nice.
Mm-hmm. Yesterday I was at a demonstration. I didn't see you.
Yes, the human chain.
Were you not there?
I wasn't there, no.
Yeah.
I couldn't make it.
Well, I'll tell you, one thing that you escaped was the cold.
Oh.
Like I kind of can't, I take a lot of pride in the fact that we Torontonians or Iranian Canadians are trudging out there in the demonstrations but it really is starting to get annoying. And because yesterday it was I was looking at the temperature or the forecast, and it was supposed to be above 0, 5 degrees, 6 degrees Celsius for those of you listening in places that use Fahrenheit. And so I just wore a leather jacket. You have
that's a bad idea.
Well, I didn't think it would be, but anyway, yeah, it was. And then, of course, my mother, because I went to visit my mother after the demonstration, and she said, "Yani lucht rafti birun," like, and I'm not lucht. This is the mother thing where they say you're naked when you're, for some reason, even though you're fully clothed, but not wearing the appropriate, I don't know, Canada Goose coat or something. So anyway, it was very cold. But it was great to see that kind of gathering of people, yeah, I saw your photos, and I saw other photos of it, which is great. I'm glad people are still coming out. Yeah.
I'm sad I missed it. I was doing work. I didn't just miss it because I wasn't doing anything.
No,
but,
I'm sure. You're working for the revolution. What
time.
you were doing, I'm sure. Yeah. Well, it was good to see everybody who was out there, and thanks to the organizers of that human chain in Toronto. I know there's events going on around the world. I don't mean to be Toronto-centric, or Richmond Hill actually is where it was. It wasn't even in the city of Toronto. It was north of Toronto in an area we called Richmond Hill and Markham. But they did a good job of organizing that and trying to keep this keep the spirit going here in terms of supporting Iran. So before we get to Houshang Touzie and Peyman Salimi, we'll do a Rook Roundtable. Pega is away today, but I am happy to announce in her stead, here sitting in the studio, is producer, broadcaster, Canadian correspondent for Iran International, Mahsa Mortazavi. Hello.
Salam.
Nice to have you back. Durud.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here. I saw you in the demonstration yesterday.
I saw you, and I want to say you were locht. And I'm not kidding.
You agree with my... Don't feed my mother.
I am going to, because I saw you freezing, and I was holding the microphone myself, and my hands were freezing off. And then I looked at you, and I saw that you looked cold. So obviously what you were wearing wasn't enough.
I really thought that it was going to be warmer. And then I was holding a flag too, and I had to, and I didn't have my gloves, and the whole thing was, but it was, it was good to be there. And you have to work these things. You go to these things and you run around interviewing people. When you do, so there's been so many demonstrations in Toronto, how do you choose the ones you're going to go to, or do you cover them all?
I try. Well, I can't be in the same place at the same time, in two places at the same time. So I try to choose the ones that have more people. And Richmond Hill is the area that Persians are. So they usually come out where it's north. And so usually when we have demonstrations happening in downtown area, and we have one in Richmond Hill, based on my experience, the Richmond Hill ones, they have more turnouts. So I go there. And then I do have another strategy. I send a separate camera person to the other place and get some footage, and I add it to my report if it's necessary.
And what was the most interesting thing that somebody said to you yesterday? Even if it didn't make it on the air.
I get some angry comments from people, honestly, and it makes me sad because I've been trying so hard, and I know all the journalists have been trying so hard to cover everything. But it's just at a point that people are angry because the revolution is not going forward, and it makes it difficult for them to continue because of the circumstances happening in Iran, and every day there is something new adding to the situation. So I understand the frustration, but I would comment to those people who come to us as journalists and give us harsh comments to cool down, because it's not helping.
They were complaining that you weren't covering something, or
they were asking it, why aren't you saying this and that, and why is Iran International not saying this and that? And I don't watch all the programs on Iran International.
You're not responsible for all the programs on it.
And honestly, I can't comment on everything because I don't watch everything. I don't have the time to watch everything that airs on Iran International. So be kind to one another, and let's move forward.
Well, there was a guy standing two over from me on in the human chain. At one point, when you walk by, he said, "Do you know where this woman is from?" And I was like, "Where's this going?" And he said, "International." He was like really impressed that you were there as Iran International. Yeah, he was really excited about it. Well, to segue into talking about the real stuff here, it's hard doing these programs because, on the one hand, I don't want to be a downer, and and frankly, I know it's not good for business. I'm not as happy to listen to my Arsenal podcast if we lose, because I know the guys are going to be like, "Oh, let's talk about how bad the game was," and it's hard to do a show that everybody wants to listen to if you're just kind of seeing the negatives, and so I try not to do that. On the other hand, I don't want to be a fake cheerleader and sort of be pretending everything's, come on, go team, isn't it great? Because it isn't. So the reality is, I thought last week was a really bad week for Iranians. I really did. I really thought what happened with the Human Rights Council, with platforming the foreign minister of the Islamic Republic, not walking out at all.
Some did.
Well, no, actually. The ones who did were NGOs or some, ministers, but none of the major players walked. No foreign minister or ambassador walked out. In fact, some of them, as you know, had meetings with him, famously on television. And so the platforming of this guy after this campaign for a walkout, the death of Piruz, which was more of a symbolic blow, but also a symbolic example of the dysfunction of this country at this point. And then, of course, the horrible story of the poisoning of schoolgirls, and which continues. The story continues, but it really became quite animated last week. It was a tough week, I think, to objectively. I know, as I said on Thursday, there were some opposition leaders, quote unquote, speaking in places and getting meetings and things like that, and there's that type of activity is happening. But it was hard to really objectively look at this and go, we won the week. The revolution is moving forward in a big way. Did you feel that?
Yes. So there are weeks that not everything turns out the way you hope for it to be. And it's okay, because it's a part of the revolution. I'm not going to be a happy cheerleader either. But I see stuff happening outside of Iran in comparison to inside of Iran, and I see that the revolution is still alive because we have 8 million people outside of Iran who are mostly very much active every day, every week. Like, I've been covering this for the past almost 6 months, and there hasn't been a week that there hasn't been a demonstration here in Toronto. I know that other places in Canada, every week something is happening. I see it, and they send it on social media to me, and everybody's so eager for us to cover their story because they want to reflect on what they're doing to support Iranians inside of Iran. And as you also mentioned yesterday when we had an interview, you said that we want for the people of Iran to hear what we're doing for them. So what's happening is that in the demonstrations that are happening here outside of Iran, we are taking away the legitimacy of the Iranian government. And this is a part of a government to be successful. They have to have some credit outside of their country when it's taken away from them. And we see that it's happening.
Great point.
We see it's happening. Every time that there is a demonstration in each country, we see the people of that country, the leaders of that country turn up to come in the demonstration to support people. I've had multiple interviews with leaders of Canada. The previous one was with the Minister of Immigration, where they had released some new laws and regulations for the people of Iran who are already in Canada to stay here. And at the end, he said, Zan zandagi azadi, and it makes me feel so good.
Yeah, but they're all saying that, Mahsa.
I know.
They're all saying that.
Well, you have
and
to
Justin
pretend,
Trudeau's walking out there, and the German government is saying this, and the Swedish foreign minister, and then they turn around and have meetings with the foreign minister of the Islamic Republic, or they don't put the IRG. You also interviewed Melissa Landsman, who's an opposition member here in Canada, who was explaining that there doesn't seem to be any legitimate reason for not putting the IRGC on the terrorist list. So the problem is this really lip service? I mean, when I talk about last week being a bad week, it was really, not to sound naive, but it was really truly a moment where you could look at the landscape. And by the way, I didn't add the fact that there's rumors, there's all kinds of chatter coming out of the U.S. where they're angling for a deal with Iran. You know, we hear in different ways, right? So no matter what people are saying, no matter what the lip service is, it seems pretty clear that for now, the status quo, business as usual, let's deal with the regime, let's, hedge our bets that there's no revolution for now. That seems to be the dominant thinking of the West.
The West?
Of the West. Of Western leaders, et cetera.
I can argue on that.
Go ahead.
I will.
Where's your evidence? Where have the ambassadors been recalled? Where have the embassies been closed? Where have they put the IRGC on the terrorist list?
No, they haven't, but there's still, the sanctions are ongoing. They haven't stopped. As long as they haven't stopped, I hope for something good to come out of it. As long as we continue to be on the streets in every country, there is still hope.
Of course, I'm not saying there's no hope.
And I understand that people in Iran are scared because now it's not only people who are on the streets, it's now schoolgirls who are just going to school and having their normal life. And many of them will end up not going to school for the rest of their lives.
Let's get to that. I want to ask you specifically about the schoolgirl situation. But
I will continue for the point that you were making in regards with the revolution and not having any reflection, or not as much as we want in the Western countries. I would say that it's still ongoing, and as long as it's ongoing and we see things happening, there's still hope, and we should. I was listening to Hamid Ismailion the other day, and he was saying that you don't have to come up with a list of new items every time you have a meeting with a leader. It's just continuing to put pressure on the same point every day. So what I hear in the demonstrations every time I go is put IRGC on the terrorist list. And I now hear that members of the parliament, they chant with people to put IRGC on the terrorist list.
I feel like you've interviewed too many Liberal cabinet ministers. Now you're friends with them and you don't want to be too hard on them anymore.
No, that's not true. Pierre Poilievre is a good friend of mine.
Listen,
don't make rumors.
First of all, I'm not saying there isn't hope. I wouldn't be on a demonstration yesterday if I didn't think there was hope. So I completely agree that there is hope. And I do believe 100% the goalposts have moved, right? If you compare where we were at last August to where things are at today, it's unthinkable. I mean, we could have never imagined that. First of all, there is a diaspora. There are Iranians around the world who are united on the idea that there has to be regime change. There isn't that debate anymore between reform and regime or change. We have de facto kind of opposition type figures that people can now who are getting invited to speak in parliaments and all of that. That's a huge step forward. And even inside Iran, we also have, despite all the difficulties, women refusing to wear the hijab and bravely doing so. And the ground has shifted. There's no question about that. I guess what I want to be realistic about is when we do an episode like we did last Thursday, Voices from Inside Iran, which is a series we've been doing where, as you know, we interview these people who have been the protesters. They're on the front lines. They're arguably the most optimistic because they're the ones who were going out on the streets. And we talked to people last week and we changed their names and we protect them. We talked to them in Tabriz. We talked to people in Tehran. We talked to people in Mashhad. And all of them said, feeling pretty hopeless. Nothing going on here. The regime is cracked down. Everyone's terrified. It just is the thing that concerns me is that, and by the way, they all say they appreciate the demonstrations outside. They see them, whether it's in Brussels, whether it's in Sydney, whether it's in Toronto, whether it's in Los Angeles, whether it's in New York, Vancouver, Calgary, they see it in Iran. They see it partly because of your coverage. They see it and they appreciate it and it gives them energy. And so that's why I know it's important to keep doing that, right? Because the kid in Tabriz tells me it's important to us. But I do feel like we have an enthusiasm outside of Iran that sometimes may be feeding into an unrealistic expectation of how quickly this thing is going to go when you actually talk to the people inside Iran. And my fear is what happens if the diaspora that has been so activated becomes deflated and stops putting the pressure on. If the delta is too great between what's actually going on and the expectations, there's this, it's not happening this time, let's all go home. And that's what I don't want to happen. That's where I'm coming from.
This is where the leaders come in, because every movement has to have leaders, and we have a group of leaders that is forming, that is now in the beginning stages of doing stuff. And now people are going to rely on what they're going to give them. So what has been going on with the 8 people who are trying to gather up and lead what's going on in Iran, they are mostly focusing on how they should hire or make groups of specialists on each individual aspect of the country inside Iran. Either it's Mohit Zist or whatever it is, like in different aspects. So
the economy,
or the economy, or whatever, education, whatever. So when they have their groups, they're going to lead people. And for us, our responsibility is to keep it alive until that happens. Everybody has to take their own responsibility in this puzzle. And as long as we do our part, we don't have, I as a person, I don't have control over everything that happens. The only thing I can do is that I can keep my hopes and continue what I believe in, because when you believe in something, you're going to lead your way towards it. And if people in Iran, they believe in a regime change, which I think they do, and it's past that phase that they think that they can fix what's going on in Iran, as long as we believe it, it's going to happen.
Let me ask you if this is what you're saying. You're saying, despite the fact that the diaspora, the people, Iranians outside of Iran, this incredible surge of demonstrative unity for change in Iran that we've seen in cities around the world, despite the fact that that was actually inspired by brave people on the streets of Iran. If you remember, September and October,
Right.
we're watching young women, young boys, young people in Iran leading this thing, and we're trying to follow them. You're saying, even if that has stopped for now or paused or is unable to continue, the diaspora has to keep it going. It's our turn. We keep the activity going. Keep holding the torch. We don't get disheartened or deflated if things are not visibly happening in Iran, and we continue doing this, knowing that any moment the right match lights and things can change.
Yeah, basically that's what I'm saying. But at the same time, I'm not saying that we should be separated from the society in Iran and do our own thing and let them be what they are being right now. It's a combination of being a part of that society and at the same time take benefit from the freedom of speech that we have here and how far we've come from September until now, and keep on putting pressure on the leaders. I know that the 8 people, we call it Shorai Hambastagi. I don't know what it is in English.
I really don't know what to call them, because they're not officially leaders.
No, they're not a coalition. Yeah. What they are is that they are 8 people who are trying...
Representative.
Okay. So these people, they are also in touch with people inside of Iran. It's not that they are deciding on their own. And it doesn't matter how connected you are to Iran. When you are outside of Iran, there are points that you won't understand. Even if somebody like myself is reviewing the news every day, and I am so connected to Iran that I feel that I understand everything that's been going on in Iran. But I'm not understanding because I think the revolution is still very hot in Iran. But actually it's not. One of the parts of this, symbol of this movement, Zan Zendegi Azadi, is Zendegi. Zendegi means continuing with your life. So if you're continuing with your life in Iran, you're not doing a bad thing. Even if I am happy for some moments in my life, because each person can't be a revolutionary person 24/7, right?
Gotcha. Yeah. Yes, and I guess again, what I'm saying is, I know people who are quite well connected, who are very sharp, who are thinkers and who've been very involved in Iranian affairs and the Iranian community, who as of October were saying this thing's over in 3 months, where the regime's going to be toppled. Do you know anybody like that?
Yeah.
Did you interview people, even not just some random person on the street, but thinkers, people who follow this stuff, people who are involved, maybe people who are politically active, who thought this thing was going to end pretty quickly?
I've talked to people. What I encounter mostly is that people, they thought that this would be quiet in a few months, but the revolution will go on in different ways.
No,
because it's a
sorry,
change.
I disagree. I don't believe that. I know that's what people are saying now. There was a moment in October and November when there was a lot of excitement. Let's be real here, that where people thought this is just going to keep growing and keep going, and there was really not a lot of people coming out going, actually, this is going to take years. Even at the top level of analysis, it was like Iran government teetering on the brink and all of this stuff.
There are still people who say that.
Okay, so what I'm saying is, for those folks, this has been a disappointment, because now they're starting to realize the regime isn't going to be gone by Nowruz.
No.
That's not going to happen. So I've seen 2 reactions to that. One is people who double down, well, let's keep going out there, let's do what we can to support, let's keep the focus. The other reaction is, I'm going back to posting my selfies and having a life that's completely devoid of any more uprising stuff because it's not happening right now.
Have you seen anybody posting a selfie lately?
What do you mean?
Like going back to normal life?
Of course. I see lots of people.
With a friend at a restaurant or partying
Yes.
or dancing. You have?
Yes.
I haven't.
Well, you're...
I don't have
you
that
only
kind
follow
of
political people, I suppose. Of
I
course. Look, you could even see the numbers. Come on. The demonstrations, I know it's cold here in Toronto.
I know.
And we say it's great that we're all coming out and stuff, but it's not what it was in October.
It's not.
You know,
it's not. Honestly,
there's a fatigue, there's a concern, there's a disappointment, there's maybe I'll wait and see if things happen. I mean, I love to really embrace the idea that revolutions don't happen overnight. There's peaks and valleys. It's gonna take some time, but I hope that people stay on board despite weeks like last week, because it can be a punch in the gut, I think.
Yes, let's hope for that.
I'm lucky to have you here because you work for Iran International, and 2 weeks ago the big story was something about your network having to leave the UK. I did an opening essay about it because it was so horrendous. The idea that an independent media organization has to leave a country that isn't Iran because of Iran.
Foreign interference,
Do you have any update on this, or what is going on with this?
There is not much that is shared with us. What I know as a journalist who is not even in London is that on February 18, everybody had to work from different places. Many of my colleagues, they flew to Washington, D.C., where our other offices, and they're working 24/7. And it's a change for them because it was only like a few hours a day, and it's a smaller studio, it's a smaller space, and there are a few people who are working there, and they are not a complete team. They weren't a complete team. So they had to work around the situation and make it happen, and they're doing a great job. Honestly, I've seen people working 18 hours.
So is anyone working out of London now?
No.
Or are they back to work in London?
No, nobody's back to work. No, they can't, because the building that we were in London is a building that there are many other offices there. And the police was saying to us that if you are working here, you're not only endangering your lives, but endangering many people's lives, because it's a business park. It's a big area, and there are, I don't know, hundreds of people working there. So
and
it wasn't
presumably
safe.
there was threats coming in.
Yes, so they arrested a person, and that person revealed some information that was very scary, and revealed that there are things going on that we don't even know. And not only me, none of our people, we don't know the details. Only our security manager knows it. And he's been in touch with the police in London, and they are offering a new studio for us that is in a separated area, that isn't a place that people go by. So the threats are minimal. And some of our team will operate from there, because honestly, the work our people are doing in DC is very tiring, and I really compliment them on what they're doing.
I mean, I have to think that if you're going to work for Iran International in this moment, an entire network that has obviously declared its position is not favorable to the regime in Iran, that there's going to be implications to this kind of because it's a brutal regime, and that's its hallmark. That said, the reality is pretty scary. When I couldn't believe this. I don't even know if I've heard anything quite like this, that in a separate country, an entire network having to relocate. Tell me how you dealt with it personally.
So personally, Canada is a second home to people with connections with the Islamic Republic. Unfortunately, we see more people flying in, and they're taking benefit from the things that is in place for people who are damaged by the Islamic Republic, and they're not saying that they are one of those people. So they are taking refuge here and building their lives with the money of people and having a beautiful life here. And at the same time, they are threatening people like myself. And I have been threatened, and I have been to the police. And to be honest with you, in some demonstrations that I expect many people to be there, I take my personal security person because I don't feel safe. And my network understands the risk for everybody, not only people in London. So this is something that is ongoing around the world, where we have our correspondents. What it was personally to me, I saw it coming because we've been thinking about it for many months. The building in London was protected by many officers and security people for months. And we saw it coming. We knew that they wouldn't stop until they progressed to the level that we stopped working in London. So they, behind the scenes, I know that there were preparations happening. But as I said, because these are very security concerned, I don't have that much information, unfortunately.
When you say that there are Iranians that come, related to the regime, that come to Canada using the benefits that are meant for legitimate immigrants or refugees, give us an example of that. It's an important point.
Yeah, so one example that everybody knows about, because I don't want to I don't want to put blames, or I don't want to point fingers at anybody that we don't know. One person that we really know about is Sardar Talayi. When you remember last summer, he was walking on a treadmill here in Richmond Hill, close to the area that all of us live. And he had a visa. He had a visa to come here. And he was one of the people who was responsible for oppressing people in Iran, especially women. He was the chief of police in Tehran. So the immigration system has a crack. And we should accept this fact that people can fall through the cracks and come to Canada and stay here. And we know that there are many people. Like I see reports from Canadian networks like CBC, Global News, that they specifically target a specific person and they go for them. And we do the same. We report on those people. But this is something that has to be researched. And we are in a lawful country. We have to go by the rule of law. So we have to, as I talk to many people in the Canadian government, they usually suggest that if anybody knows any information about those people with ties to the Islamic Republic, they should go to their MP or RCMP and inform them about having legit documents that shows that.
It's ironic, isn't it, that Canada has got to be one of the most galvanized places in terms of the opposition diaspora, opposition to what's happening in Iran, to the in terms of supporting freedom for Iran. Big community, big demonstrations in Vancouver. You see it. There was a huge one in Montreal. There's Calgary. There's Winnipeg and Ottawa, and of course here in Toronto, in the Greater Toronto area. And yet it's also Canada's the haven for, we hear this over and over again, and we see evidence of it, and it's extremely dispiriting.
I haven't seen anybody expelled. I really hope to see somebody expelled from Canada, because this is the point that I'm starting to lose my faith in the Canadian government, because as I said, you have to put pressure on the same point over and over again. For the past 3 years, I personally have been responsible for putting pressure on that specific point. I have talked to many people in the Canadian government. I have asked them, what are the evidence that you can show me that you have done something about this happening? You can't just say that we don't want this to be a safe haven for these people. But I haven't seen anything.
I know I can't keep you here forever. Let me get to the big story. Maybe we buried the lead here, that the big story that we would have to deal with at the roundtable here before we get to Houshang Touzie and Peyman Salimi. This is these horrific poison attacks. I don't even know what to call them at this point. Is it poison attack? Is it chemical warfare on Iranian schoolgirls, on university students? What is your take on this at this point?
They call it bioterroristic attacks because they use a combination of poisonous gases, and they throw it in schools, which is brutal, because schoolgirls, why would you do that? The most vulnerable group of the society is girls who go to school, right? And so I have some numbers here for you. So far, up to this morning, there were 230 schools attacked.
Wow.
Starting
it was
from
50 last Thursday.
No, it's from 3 months ago, because the first ones started.
Yes, but it's in the last week we found out about
so many.
Yes,
so many. From last week up to now, it's 115, and then it's been in 2/3 of the provinces of the country. So it's going so fast. I remember when it was only limited to Qom.
Qom, yeah.
And then it was like in a week, 2/3 of the country, 5,000
In the beginning,
students.
we thought, but it seemed like, okay, maybe this is a horrible one-off. Somebody did something stupid at but then we start to find out that it's more and more and more widespread.
They blame it on Hazara people. I don't know. A group of radical Islamists that they do this because they believe that girls shouldn't go to school. Anyway, so 5,000 students were affected. The sad thing about this is that it's not being taken seriously, despite the fact that Khamenei came on and said that this should be taken very seriously and they should be punished to the max. But we don't know if this is something that the government is doing or a separate group is doing. So until we find out what's happening, I guess.
But the point has been made many times. I mean, it was made here on the Roundtable last week. Hamid Ismail made it on Twitter today. How can this be happening without the complicity of the regime? I mean, it's at this point, it's impossible. It's inconceivable, right?
For a regime who finds a killer in a crowd in 23 days and executes that person,
correct.
It shouldn't be that hard of a thing to
They
have
can
some
find the couple
schools.
dancing out front of on the street somewhere, but they can't somehow find. And as one of our roundtable people Dario was saying last Thursday, I didn't necessarily know this. Schools, and particularly schools for girls in Iran, have quite a security apparatus around them. So it's not like anybody can just walk in and do anything. You have to. Mothers coming to pick their daughter up have to show ID, and so this is absurd that there would be any notion that the regime doesn't know about this. Do you believe it's these Islamist terrorists?
I think it's a distraction from what's happening for the revolution. I personally believe it's a distraction. They want people to focus on their safety, and they want people to believe that they are lucky to have safety if everything goes back to normal, because they're going to later on they're going to blame this on the groups that are trying to terror the community. And when it's all done, they're going to be happy. Like, people are going to be happy that the Islamic Republic saved them. So I believe it's a distraction.
I mean, KNZ made this point last week, which is basically that the number one tool that this regime has used since day one really was fear. And the heartbreaking part of this is that the one generation that seemingly had escaped the trauma of dealing with that fear had been the new generation that was, leading these protests, the teenagers. We've been saying how brave they are, and this is targeted at them. Don't think you can get away with this. We're gonna fucking poison you, And you were making the point, Kenzie, that about this also being a way to target to scare the parents. So the parents then double down on saying, nope, you're not going out on the street. No more protests for you because look at what's happening, right?
That was what I said last week. And I think it's such a manipulative way to be able to sort of bring down the whole heat of the revolution by like scaring them and also distracting them, as you were saying. It's just very, very disappointing.
It becomes a bit of a trope to say, where's the media, where's the Western media? But I have to say on this one, as two people who've been working in the media for a long time, I'm pretty surprised that this isn't a deliberate poisoning of chemical attacks on kids, on schoolgirls, on students. That isn't a big story in the West is I guess evidence that the Western media, if there was any caring about what's going on in Iran, has sort of given up on that. Oh yeah, bad things happen there. We know there's a regime. Some people oppose it, right?
Well, there are things happening everywhere in the world, and the media is covering as much as they can. I know it's a very big story and it should be covered more, but I've seen it covered in many platforms. I've seen. What is lacking is the reaction from UNICEF and UNESCO and responsible organizations, because when they step in, then that's going to become a bigger story, and then the media is going to come up and say, like, here is what UNESCO says. As you said, like in Iran, everything happens is not good. Anything that is happening these days is making bad stories. So the media.
But I have to say, you're absolutely right. There's a lot going on around the world. We can't expect the Western media to pick up every little story of what's, but this is really macabre. This is evil horror movie stuff that I'm just it breaks my heart that we're not seeing this in New York Times front page.
Right.
Schoolgirls poisoned intentionally by the government. I mean, geez,
Do they have the evidence to say it's the government? I know we believe it's the government, but for a media to come up and say it's the government, they have to have evidence, right?
Okay. So they say, assumed
Allegedly.
to be alleged. Yeah. I mean, there's, you don't think the New York Times hasn't written stuff like that about it. I mean, of course you could, there's ways to, safely make these statements.
Right.
Trying to think of something uplifting to end on.
Okay. Let's see. Do you want to talk about what's coming up in Toronto?
You can go ahead and talk about that. I wanted to thank you for being here. It's always a pleasure to get your insights. Sure, you've got something uplifting to talk about in Toronto? I could talk about it was a great weekend for my football team. That's my greatest distraction. Watching Arsenal, there's just, it was like the best. It was the best weekend. I'm actually giving up on being a football fan because it was the soccer fan, because it was the best weekend I could ever have in terms of what our team did and what happened to other teams. So that, that's
you always get me lost when you talk about football because I don't understand a word of it.
Right.
But anyway, so as an uplifting thing and as a reference to the coalition or the Gruha Hamvastagi or whatever you want to call it, there are going to be things happening here in Toronto, and it's going to be big. So I hope people hang in there until that happens.
We will. No doubt. Realistic talk doesn't mean we're giving up. No chance. Thank you, Mahsa. Always good to see you. Thanks for all the work you're doing. We are coming to you on rookmedia.com. It's there that you can link to any and all of our platforms. We're on an ongoing mission to build this new audiovisual encyclopedia of Iranian diaspora identity. So rookmedia.com is the handle. And if you go there, you can press our support us button and become a Rook member at our Patreon page. We appreciate it. You become the recipient of the Rook newsletter, special benefits we give you, and extra programming. I want to thank Mo Nezarati, who's just become a bronze member on Patreon. Thank you, Mo, and thank you to all of you who have become Rook members on Patreon. Again, you go to rookmedia.com. This is how we keep things going here. We crowdsource rookmedia.com, press the support us button, and become a Patreon member at the bronze, silver, or gold level. All right, let's get to our first guest today. My featured guest today, first up, is a renowned Iranian-American playwright and actor who's built a solid career of popular works in the diaspora over the last 4 decades. Houshang Touzie founded a Los Angeles-based production company, Workshop 79, with the mission to produce satirical works in Persian outside of Iran. Their major hits, from Satellite with Love, The Great Escape, and Iranian in Heaven, are all socio-political satires about Iranians in the diaspora. And you have, of course, also seen Houshang in high-profile American movies and TV series such as Argo, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Homeland, and Into the Night. His latest work, Rostam is Unaware of His Son Sohrab's Whereabouts, is a teleplay that aired on Manoto TV last week and right now. It's a great pleasure to have Houshang Touzie back on the program, joining us from Los Angeles. Hello, sir.
Hello, Jian. Thank you so much for having me. Hello to you and hello to your dear listeners. I'm so happy to be here.
It's always an honor to have you on. And, we had you on, I guess it'd be a year ago or something, and it was pre-uprising. But, you spoke of course, of your frustrations with this Islamic Republican regime then. I've been eagerly anticipating having you back on the show to ask you, how have you been processing the last 6 months in this historic time for Iranians?
Yeah, in one hand, I'm so very heartbroken. I'm sure we all are, of what is happening on the streets of Iran. And on the other hand, I'm so very hopeful. I mean, this is for the first time I can really imagine people are going to win. As you know, like 4 years ago, there was a guy here in LA and would say, pack your suitcases, and we are going back. We are going back. These mullahs are stupid, and they are illiterate. They cannot rule. So soon we're going to go back to Iran. So it took like 43 years old. And after that, whoever said, no, we are going to, and I never believed it, never. But this time, from bottom of my heart, I'm believing it.
Let me ask you. I mean, I'm going to ask you about your teleplay that you've just done on Manitou in a moment. But just as somebody who I identify, I'm not sure if you'll like this or not, as a Los Angeles, staple, an Iranian American who's been in New York and L.A. for a long time. What has it been like to be in L.A. with the community at this time? Have you been? Talk to me about the unity you felt, or whether it's felt like a different time, even for what is known as one of the largest diasporic communities we have of Iranians. What has it been like in LA for you?
First of all, during the last 6 months, I was not here in LA. I'm just back from London. I was a month in London. And before that, I was 5 months in New York.
Right.
But I was in one demonstration in Los Angeles and a few demonstrations in New York. It was amazing. And one demonstration, the last demonstration, big demonstration in London. But so, in a sense, I know I can see the differences. In LA, everybody is doing something. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's taking some steps. That's amazing.
I mean, I saw your Instagram posts from New York, and New York, of course, is a much smaller Persian community, but there were thousands on the streets, and it's amazing to see, the places where you don't expect to see that kind of support, to see that.
Right.
One of the things that we were just talking about right before you came on with Mahsa Mortazavi was this increasing delta that I feel between the enthusiasm we're feeling in the diaspora, Hushang John, and what may be happening on the ground in Iran. So, for example, we just only a couple of weeks ago had that massive rally in the city that you're now sitting in, Los Angeles, with Reza Pahlavi being treated like it was like a rock star welcome, and there was 80,000 people in the streets and all of that. And then, we have this episode of Rook last Thursday where I'm talking to young protesters inside Iran who are feeling quite alone and feeling like things have slowed down and feeling a little bit hopeless at times. Do you worry about that disconnect between what we all want to be happening outside and what is actually happening inside?
I couldn't agree with you more. This is something that I'm really sad about. Specifically in Los Angeles, I've been in that 80,000 or 60,000, or some people said 180,000, but we've been there and we know it wasn't 180,000. So anyway, I think in Los Angeles, and maybe it's natural that people living in poverty are different than people living in luxury in Los Angeles. I don't want to say everybody is living in luxury here, but the whole city of LA is an entertaining city. I've seen some people that they're so happy coming to demonstrations and hug each other, kiss each other, start laughing together, So I was so shocked. I'm telling you, you have to see the sadness in the faces, in the movements. But I haven't seen that. I've seen that in London. I've seen that in New York. They were so more serious. So if people in Iran, young generation on the streets, see those clips, of course they are going to feel empty or alone.
One of the things, speaking of serious doings, one of the things that I feel like you're a master of as an artist is speaking through your work, is trying to have an influence on ideas and conversation, discussion via what you do and what you do as a producer, as a writer, as an actor. You've made a career of that, and you've done it again with this latest teleplay, which I understand you'd been working on the seeds of for years, but it feels like it's very resonant for this moment. So let me ask you this: it's called, in English, we would say Rostam is unaware of his son Sohrab's whereabouts. This aired on Manoto recently. You had been writing this play for years. What did you want to accomplish with it originally?
As you said, I started Shair Nogre, which I remember you saw it in Toronto 5 years ago. And then, and in one part, Farrokhzad says, believe me, soon the people of Iran are going to be so fed up of the regime, and they go on the streets and shout, down with dictator. So that happened. And this specific dialogue was not from him. It was from the writer. And 3 years ago, when we faced a pandemic, and I had nothing to do, so I started working on this idea, which I had years ago, but I never dared to do that. But I said, you know what? I'm going to write it. Forget about taking it on a stage. I'm going to write it and print. But later, something came to me that I have to go on, perform this piece. And we did. And eventually, right before I had to go to New York for that Broadway show, for some reason, I thought it's better to make it as a teleplay, which we did. I hope one day we can take it on a stage. And because there are like more than 30 actors in it, I cannot bring it, unfortunately, to your country, Toronto, but at least we can do it in Los Angeles. But anyway, what I wanted to do is to compare the culture of son killing, daughter killings, which, is so popular in Iran, honor killings, and so I wanted to compare this today and 1,000 years ago. And 1,000 years ago, Rostam was a national hero. And in the beginning, we have this question that, is Rostam a national hero or a professional killer? Mm-hmm. Because Rostam would go to Turan, another country, or other countries, and of course he was a victor. But what he did in that country, he brought everything from that country back to Iran, even horses, cows, all the jewelries, women, So Rostam is dear for us Iranian, I admit that. But I wanted to find an answer for this cultural shortcoming, cultural horrible thing. As an old generation, why you are not aware of the young generations?
Well, I was going to ask you. I was going to say, in fact, before when I was watching your teleplay and thinking about it, I was wondering if the allegory is that Sohrab is the representative of the young Iranian people. So does it follow that that's who Sohrab is in your rendering?
Yes, it is. In the beginning, a woman is in a demonstration is seeking for his son, which happens to be called Sohrab, not the same Sohrab. And then he finds the Ravi, the storyteller, and says, sir, have you seen my son? Storyteller says, all of these sons, all of these boys are Sohrab. They're all Sohrab. They're all heroes. Sohrab is a beloved character in Shahnameh. So I think Sohrab is like, Imam Hussein for Muslims, He was so innocent, and he gets killed very innocently.
Yes. I mean, it's interesting. I'm curious to hear what kind of feedback you've gotten on this, because, as you say, both, as far as I've always known, both Rostam and Sohrab are considered heroes, albeit very different heroes in our sort of Iranian Persian lore. So there are certainly going to be people out there who would take umbrage at the idea of Rostam being an allegory. Have you heard from those people?
I know. I'm so happy that people love this teleplay. No, but I'm sure it upsets a lot of people. I'm sure it
Yeah,
does.
I was curious to hear whether. Tell me about this. Was partly inspired, as I understand it, by a man named Abbas Nalbandian.
Yes.
What can you tell us about him?
Okay. Abbas Nalbandian, a wonderful, wonderful playwright in Iran. Abbas Nalbandian was also the director of the Drama Bookshop of Tehran, a very avant-garde center for art, for theater. So one of the playwrights, and he wasn't accepted, came up with some other young men, and they raided the bookshop and took them to Evin prison, and they closed the door of drama bookshop to put down the bookshop. But he couldn't cope with the whole thing, so he committed suicide. And Iran has lost one of the fantastic playwrights. That really broke my heart. And I always wanted to do something about it.
Yeah, I should explain that in the teleplay, it's a play within a play, and you play a playwright who is, I guess you're saying, inspired by Abbas Nalbandian. It's quite an ode to him. I mean, you worked on this play. It's now this teleplay that seems quite prescient, Hushang John. I mean, it's very resonant with what is happening in Iran today. Did you adapt some of what you had already been working on to speak to the current revolutionary atmosphere, or did it naturally just lend itself to that?
Not at all. I didn't know what's going on, what will go on later. This was a feeling. It was a sense. Honestly, this play started to write in beginning of the pandemic, and we never changed it.
Because it feels like it's written for the uprising. You know that, right? It feels like it's written for this period post Mahsa Amini's killing.
Exactly. But they keep asking me, how did you know? I said, I don't know. As a matter of fact, in my opinion, a writer, I didn't write this play. Something else came to me. I think that's how it works.
I said that I think you're a master of using your artistic talents and your artistic works to speak to our Iranian reality. Tell me about the impact that you believe art can have. I mean, it occurs to me that it's not easy to put together a teleplay like this. There's a lot of effort, there's a lot of money, there's a lot of resources that no doubt had to go into this. You could ask for airtime. I'm sure they'd probably give it to you and do a speech on Manitou and, say this is why this regime is bad or whatever. Tell me why you believe this way of moving information can be so impactful.
I think art, specifically theater, can have an amazing impact on the viewers, on people. Maybe all sorts of art does the same thing, but theater, because theater is alive, so the impact is more powerful. From me, it's worth more than 1,000 demonstrations, because people in Iran will see it. And I always wanted to do something that Iranian inside Iran could watch it. So I really hope it has an impact for Zan Zendegi Azadi, which I really believe in, and I love that slogan. I just love it. Also, I should say, my goal was not to do something on Rostam Sohrab academically. I wanted to do something very entertaining, very simple, so everybody can understand it. We all Iranian, we are proud of Ferdowsi and Shahnameh, but we don't know Shahnameh. We don't know much about Shahnameh. Maybe even 1% of the population of Iran know what's going on in Shahnameh, but we heard the name and we are proud of it. So I really wanted to do something entertaining, entirely based on Shahnameh. I know some pseudo intellectuals think any kind of entertainment in arts, in theater, is cheap, but I think they are so wrong.
And by the way, anybody who's listening to this or watching this can go and see this teleplay. It's now available online. And although wait till the end of this interview or the end of this show to do that, don't go right now. You've had quite a year. It occurs to me, since we last spoke. You had talked about the fact that it was imminent at that point that when we spoke that you were going to go to New York and appear in this program. I mean, this is just to close the circle on the story of Houshang Touzie. You're this guy who famously, despite your talent and success in Iran, has to leave after the revolution. You end up working in a parking lot in New York near Broadway when you first come to New York 4 decades ago. What was it like to be starring in a Broadway show, The Kite Runner, last year?
That's an amazing story. When I moved to New York, in the beginning, my brother, who was working for this big company as a supervisor, told me, Hushang, don't you think you should leave theater alone and start working with me? So soon you can buy a car, buy a house, da, 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 da. I said, listen, I cannot do that. I'm able to sleep on the bench of a park, but I'm not able to leave theater. This is my heart, this is my life. So I did some off-Broadway shows, and one off-Broadway show, Tibetan Book of the Dead, by Jean-Claude Van Italy, which was off-Broadway, and I always used to use my 1 hour lunchtime to go to these theaters and watch the pictures of the actors, da, 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 da. It didn't happen. So I did a movie called Ferestade in 1983, and then eventually I moved to Los Angeles, and Broadway shows was always on my mind. And then 30 years later, maybe more, that just happened to come on my lap.
What did you learn from doing The Kite Runner?
Oh, a lot. I'm telling you. Honestly, I didn't want to go to, to play a part. I wanted to learn the system of Broadway. It's an amazing system. It's everything that I could bring it down into Iranian theater and use it, which I'm going to do it.
Any example of something you're going to steal from Broadway for Iranian theater?
I think one characteristic of Broadway show is to have to be laser focused. So whoever is working on Broadway are not doing a job, because getting there is not easy and staying there is even more difficult. So everybody is dedicating himself to that play. Believe it or not, we had 8 performances a week, 2 days a week, Wednesdays and Saturdays, 2 shows, and the show was almost 3 hours.
It's always a great pleasure to talk to you. I commend you on this new teleplay, by the way, which you are at the center of. I mean, you tend to develop these projects that, speaking of being a workaholic, I mean, you tend to develop these projects where it's you on stage for the entire time carrying the whole thing. And it occurred to me before I let you go, the last time you were on here, we were talking about your spectacular work that you've been touring for some time now, that is as an ode to Feridun Farrokhzad, who you play, of course. And he's such a character that we think of in terms of his being an icon of the pre-Islamic Revolution Iran, being someone who was unafraid to speak out, of course, as we see in your show. What do you think Feridun Farrokhzad would make of this moment and what's going on in Iran?
This play was based on Feridun Farrokhzad, and we use Farrokhzad as an example of all the Feridun Farrokhzads. But one thing I want to say about Feridun Farrokhzad, I think we should all be very grateful to him. He foreseen it years ago, that people would come on the streets and shout, down with dictator, marg bar dictator. So it's amazing. It's amazing. And one more thing, if you allow me to talk about Shahzadeh Reza Pahlavi or Reza Pahlavi, whatever you like to, is that he's doing a great job. I personally, I would help anybody who takes one step towards democracy and freedom. But me personally, I'm not belonging to any group, left, right, in between. No, I'm independent. I think an artist should be independent. People like you should always be independent to be allowed later, if God forbid anything wrong happens, then you're allowed to criticize. This is the essence of being a reporter, being an actor or whatever, an artist or playwright. But I really wish them the best. And whatever I can do in my power, I will do for him or for anybody who is working for freedom.
I think that's very wise, perhaps, and appreciated. Hushang Touzie, I'm always grateful to have you on the program. Your wisdom, your talent, your experience is so precious to us. Thank you for taking the time today.
Thank you so much, Jian. Thank you. I want to thank all the people working in that media. I think it's so very important to continue on that, especially younger generation of Iranian. They speak mostly in English, so they have to be, to be included in whatever is going on. And I really wish you the best.
Merci. Hope to see you soon. You come back to Toronto, please.
Yeah, with my broken English. Thank you so much for bearing with me, and hopefully I see you in Toronto.
Khodafis. Bye-bye.
Khuda.
This is Rook, episode 244, Strength of Characters. Remember to tune into all things Rook related, our previous episodes, our videos, our funnies, our extras. All of that is at rookmedia.com, where you can also become a Rook member on our Patreon page by pressing the Support Us button. My next guest is a very talented Iranian-Italian singer-songwriter, guitarist, music producer, friend of our program. Take a listen to this.
جای باتوم ولایت ساچمه ننگ فقاعت مونده رو تن نحیفت 10 تایی شدن حریفت 10 تا کفتار و یه آهو سر تو به زور بازو به لب جدول کوبیدن من دیگه هیچی ندیدم همونایی که مردن سر یه تارمون گلولایی که خوردن از دین و آیین زور همه اونایی که بردن به اسم رهبر کور کی میگه اینا گرگن ای فیمون که لاشش شرف دار.
Little taste of the song Nabza Asphalt, an ode to the revolution right now for freedom in Iran, and the work of our next guest, Peyman Salimi. Paymon is a singer-songwriter, also known as the lead vocalist of the European pop rock band you were hearing there called the Allophones, although you may have seen Paymon, of course, playing with Ali Azimi or solo or in various derivations. Paymon was born and raised in Tehran. In 2004, he moved to Florence, Italy to pursue his lifelong passion in music. He studied guitar, obtained his master's in music technology, graduating with honors. Paymon has been active about the current situation in Iran. As I said, he has dedicated that latest single, Nabza Asphalt, to all the victims of the Islamic regime's violence and oppression. His forthcoming album is called The Psychology of Letting Go, and we're actually going to get a preview of a couple of more of his brand new tracks today. And right now, Peyman Salimi joins me from Brussels. Hello, sir.
Hey, Jian. How are you doing? It's good to be back.
Nice to have you back on the show, always. I really love that song, Nabza Asphalt. What can you tell us about it?
Thank you, brother. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, just like many other Iranian artists, I was hit by what was happening. I decided to dedicate one of the tracks of the album because that track was supposed to be the fourth track of the upcoming album, but I took it out. I changed the whole lyrics, and I dedicated it to what I was trying to express on what was going on, what's been going on actually. We gathered together with the band, the Alphonse Influence. We did a few live takes, and I re-recorded the vocals afterwards, but that's pretty much it.
So Nabza Asphalt, if I, with my rudimentary Persian, asphalt is asphalt, right? It's like,
yeah.
But is it like the feel of the street, or the scent of the asphalt, or how would you translate that?
There's a little bit more to it, actually. I have this side art project. It's kind of an obsession for me. It's been an obsession since I was a child. I would see like shapes in the asphalt, and I have this really hobby thing to take abstract asphalt photographies.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Meaning you're walking on the street and you look in the ground and you see things?
Yeah, I mean, there are some shapes that grab my attention, and I take some photos, and then afterwards I do some post-production on them, basically inverting the colors. I try to come up with like unique shapes, and yeah, it's just I think it's just some sort of therapy for me. And that song used to be, I mean, the original title was Nabza Asphalt 2, even if it wasn't about the protests and the women life freedom. But I mean, those days I was seeing so many videos of people in the protests on the street, and eventually they would run. So the camera, their cell phone would take, would record the asphalt while they were running, because
right.
they were trying to escape from security forces,
right.
And the ideas clash together, just like.
When you say you've been inspired like other artists or affected, I mean, you're another person who you left Iran a little less than 20 years ago, and I have to think partly because you couldn't be the kind of artist you want to be, play the kind of music you want to play, had you stayed in Iran, in the Islamic Republic. You're seeing this unprecedented possibility over the last 6 months, and this outpouring both inside Iran and outside. How have the last six months been for you from that perspective? What kind of emotions have you been going through, Peyman?
Well, it's been intense, definitely. I mean, it affects you on so many levels. It affects you emotionally. It's a weird dynamic, to be honest, Jian. When you're outside, it's hard to find your spot. Like, you don't know where you're standing most of the time, because you don't know to what extent you can be a part of that, because you're just out of that reality, out of that context. Just to define the line that I can, to what extent I can express myself. I can have an opinion on this whole thing.
Why is that? You think somehow because you're outside of Iran, that should limit your ability to have opinions about what's going on?
It's not about opinions. Definitely, you can. Everybody can have an opinion, and nobody can take away that right from you. But
I could be outraged about apartheid in South Africa without having to live in South Africa, right? Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, what I'm trying to say is not that I don't have the right to express my rage or express my feelings or object, just artistically something. But it's a very thin line to what's the line for me to say, okay, because I've been outside that reality for 20 years. And I can only follow what's been happening there through social media and through internet, or some friends that, they travel, they come back, they tell you stories. And I mean, last time I was in Iran, it was 7 years ago. I've only been there 3 times since I'm out. So I think it really limits your perspective. Even in the past, there has been protests like the Green Movement, but they never intrigued me. Like, I never came up with a song. But this time, it's just, for the first time, I thought that I have something to say, because it's not about the reformists and the conservatives, and it's not about any kind of leader. It's just so legit. This fight is so legit, and then it's so true and deep.
You're getting at something, or trying to get at something that I'm trying to excavate, because I want to understand what you're feeling, which is, what is the context that you think you would be missing? I don't mean to simplify things, but we know what this Islamic Republic regime has been about. You lived it growing up there. Your friends, your compatriot, your brothers who you play music with, can't go and play gigs in Iran. I mean, there's some basic things that we know about freedom. I can't go visit my family there. So what would be the context that we wouldn't have, that you would worry about? I'm not saying it's illegitimate. I know it's an important point to make in terms of what people that lived experience inside Iran right now versus sitting in Brussels or in Toronto. But if you can put it into words, what do you think it is that you're referring to?
I just think it's a different experience. Like, when I talk to my friends to Iran, even over the recent months, I think the way that we perceive things through social media is way more powerful in some aspects, but also it makes us miss some real points. I think that the reality that's been happening in Iran over the past 4 months might be slightly different from what I've been perceiving through social media. There are some facts that you cannot have any discussion on. Like,
the economy is tanking, schoolgirls are being poisoned. I mean, these are things that these are things that you can have a voice on, and you can comment on, because these are facts that you cannot deny, of course. But I think there are so many subtle dynamics that when you're outside that society, outside that context, you just miss, and you don't know. Can you think of one?
I repeat the example that whenever I talk to my friends, they're pretty concerned, and some of them, they're really affected by this situation. But sometimes I feel like when you're in it, I mean, at the end of the day, you have to live your life,
right?
Your routine life.
I got you.
And, yeah, you know what I mean. And for us, outside, it's just like it feels like everything is suspended.
Well, I was talking about this in our little roundtable earlier on this show, which is increasingly something that I don't know if I'm worried about it. Maybe I'm worried about it, but I'm definitely noticing, and I sometimes I don't even know how to articulate it, because I don't want to take anything I don't want to take the wind out of the sails of those who are in the diaspora, who are fighting for, I was on a demonstration yesterday here in Toronto, but there does seem to be an increasing delta, like a difference, a gap between the, let's call it, enthusiasm or the expectations of those in the diaspora. You're in Brussels. You were there. There was a big demonstration there a couple of weeks ago. You were on some rooftop taking a look at it. I saw one of your stories or so. The enthusiasm that people are showing in the diaspora versus this episode we did last week, we're talking to young people inside Iran. We changed their names, we protected them, whatever. And these are protesters. These are frontline protesters. I don't know if you heard it. And every single one of them said, we're kind of hopeless right now. Nothing's actually happening here. We all want regime change, but so you get a bit of a different feeling when you're out on the street in Toronto or in Brussels or in LA, and you're like, yeah, we're doing this, from what is actually happening. Is that what partly you're referring to?
Yeah. I mean, it can be included in what I've been trying to sum up. Still, I mean, nevertheless, we can do a lot. We can really, I think in all the revolutions and in my tiny little knowledge of politics, I think the international recognition of an opposition is the most important thing when something is happening, when there's a change in the system and in the regime. The international community wants to know who is going to deal with afterwards. When you put yourself in the shoes of the international community, they would say, okay, we would do that. We would shut down the embassies. But after that, who would represent the people of Iran? So we don't have that. And I think that's what people outside Iran can really try to focus on, just to come up with some sort of board. I mean, there have been.
They're trying to. I mean, I guess.
Yeah, they're trying to. It's really hard. It can go wrong in a blink of an eye. Like, it's a very thin line.
And sadly, as we learned in Brussels, I mean, people are. Those ambassadors are not being recalled, and those embassies are not being closed. There's a particular lack of action being taken in Europe, despite what some of the leaders there are, will pay lip service to. And when you say you've been hearing from friends inside Iran, I'm actually going to ask you about your songs in a second to move on from this, but I'm just curious: are you feeling, I don't know, somehow less optimistic about where things are at when you hear that we're just living our lives in Iran and there isn't as much activity?
Honestly, no, I'm not less optimistic. I think for the first time over the past 20 years that I've been outside Iran, I think this is gonna go somewhere. But I think it would be pretty naive to think that it's a matter of a couple of years, or I was heavily criticized by my own fans on Instagram because I didn't cancel a couple of shows that I had back in October and December, and their reasoning was kind of weird to me. It was like, yeah, maybe just postpone your shows for a few months until this thing is over. Like, they would expect the IR regime to go away in a few months, and I thought, oh my God, this is very dangerous kind of mindset. Like, it's like way far away from any kind of reality. I think it's a very, very long process that has just started. There's a crack, and I think people have found that crack.
Well, I would characterize that as not optimistic. I mean, if you're classifying your optimism as sometime in the future years there'll be the end of this regime, I would say that's out of step with what a lot of people, members of my family, people who've said. I mean, there were, somebody I know who watches Iran very, very closely, and he's deeply involved in this stuff, and active, was telling me in October, this will be done by Christmas, and then he moved the goalposts to Nowruz. And so, I mean, it's, it's not, and these are informed people, I mean, people got excited and thought that, and now everybody's kind of going, revolutions take time. But I think to hear you say it's unrealistic within 2 years would be very hard for a lot of people to hear, because, we're hoping to see something, right?
I think many people would be happy, like super happy, if they knew that in 2 years this thing would would lead to something really concrete. But I think what I meant is that I'm way more optimistic than I was before, 2 years ago. Okay. I think I had this numbness towards the political situation in Iran, and just it was like a dead end for me. But then this thing really showed me that, people are way more politically mature right now in Iran. I mean, the slogans, the things they say, the things they follow.
I want to ask you about the concerts. But before that, there's been hope. There's been things to be enthused about. There's also been tragedy. And I know you've been inspired to write during this revolution. And I understand you wrote a song about Keon. This would be the little boy, Kian Pirfalak. He was 9 years old, 10 years old. He's become one of the icons, really, of the Iranian community around the world as a kid who lost his life in this uprising at the hands of the regime. You've been kind enough to send us a demo version to play a bit of this song. Is this a song that's going to be on the album, or is this a separate song?
Yeah, actually, this is going to replace the Nabz Asphalt, which I took from the album.
Okay.
And, because I released it back then, and I transformed it. But this one is going to replace them. It's going to be the fourth track of the album.
What's this song called?
It's called Ruzaye Behtar, the Better Days.
Let's just play a little bit of it. This is from the forthcoming record by Peyman Salimi, a little song, an ode to Kian called Ruzaye Behtar. Take a listen to this.
هرچی نفرین دنیاست به اون شرفی که نداره با صدای تیر میاد شبا تو خوابم یه تصویر میاد تصویر اون رویاهایی که کشتم آخه به چه گناهی قلبتو نشونه رفتم توی جاده بدون برگشت رنگای رنگین کمونو یکی سیاه کردم
Great chorus. There you go, a little taste of the new song Ruzaye Behtar from Peyman Salimi. Thank you so much. First of all, I mean, people rarely let any program play advanced copies of songs, let alone a demo version. Although that doesn't sound so demo to me. It sounds pretty finished. Tell me about why Kian so inspired you, Peyman.
I mean, it's hard to tell which story hit me most among all the sad things that we've been living over the past few months. But there was something about him, his character, all his videos and the internet, like the way he would introduce himself, and he wanted to be like an inventor. He would start all these videos in the name of the goddess of the rainbow or something. But not only to him, but also to his parents, especially his mom. I think she's one of the smartest women in Iran. The thing that she did in the interview, wearing a red jacket, which is like a declaration of war in their culture, you know, Bakhtiyari culture. It was all of it was like crazy. I was so hit by it.
It still feels, you know, it's almost surreal the last 6 months, isn't it? When you talk about, first of all, even that we have this common lexicon, we have these names, these people that our entire global Iranian community. When you talk about how the goalposts have moved since where they were for the last 44 years to where they moved in the last 6 months. And we know who Kian is, and Kian's mom, and Sarina, and Nika, and Khodanur, and then Piruz, the cheetah. I mean, it's a bit surreal almost that the conditions have created this. It's quite beautiful and tragic at the same time, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely if you're as an artist, it's very inspiring. It's a sad inspiration, but it moves you. It constantly moves you, and you just want to do stuff. You just want to create material for this, and yeah. But I think sadly, but that's the price we have to pay for Ruzaye Behtar, for Better Days, because you know, this situation is not sustainable.
It's not sustainable.
Know it. Even if we are all pessimistic, this is like a dead end for the regime. And you know, the moment you start like throwing chemical stuff in the schoolyards,
yeah,
trying to like because you wanna scare little kids. That's that's so pathetic. Like just it's not even like it's I don't know. I don't have any words for that. I can't.
Slaughtering the young people they purport to represent. Yeah, it's madness. It's madness. Let me ask you. Let me ask you, Paymon, about this the situation with concerts, because it's an important discussion, and it was something of a new one that facing suddenly the Iranian community. So if we remember back to September and October when the uprising began and the revolution, and there was a lot of in a good way, I think there were a lot of people, Iranians around the world, keeping each other in check. We got to keep the focus. We got to do. But one of the things that happened at that time was there was this dictate that sort of emerged that artists should not be playing concerts at this time. This is not a moment for playing music and concerts, and people shouldn't be doing plays, and people shouldn't be making movies. And you are one of the artists, the musicians that kind of did defy that a little bit. You played a couple of shows and you got criticized for it. So first of all, tell me how that experience was for you, and then I want to ask you about why you believe that people should play concerts, which I think is a legitimate opinion, but not one that had a lot of oxygen 3 or 4 months ago.
Yeah, it's such a delicate matter these days, but I think now we're past that phase.
Yes, it would seem.
I'm happy we are, because I think people understood that it's not a 2-month thing, or it's not a 3-month thing. It's a long process. So we eventually have to live. I mean, let me just like zoom out, not even as an artist, like as a normal person. If you're just constantly bombarded by, like, you're attacked by these sad news every day, a sad thing happens, and you're just receiving all this information. You're just trying to digest it, trying to cope with it, trying to stay calm, trying not to. But I mean, let's be honest. For the human brain, this thing is not sustainable. Now, anything happens in the world, you are constantly contaminated, and like almost like it's like an aggression towards your privacy. You, whether or not you're on your Instagram and you see all this information,
yes,
and you cannot filter out somehow.
That's right. We are receiving atrocities from around the world in real time, constantly into our hands, into our pockets. Yeah.
Exactly. Let alone to this situation, like being Iranian outside Iran, and something bad is going on there, and you want to be informed. You want to keep yourself up to date. You want to know what's happening. I think my point is just like the first thing that you have to do. You should really know what's your capacity as a person. I'm not talking about as an artist, as a person, to digest this information and stay relatively mentally healthy, because if I receive all these info every day, if I watch all these videos and then I'm a depressed, sad, lonely human being, what's the use of me in this whole thing? Like, what can I do as a citizen for Iran if I'm just constantly attacked by this amount of news? I think the most important thing is just like, you should know your capacity. You should know to what extent you can absorb these things and you can process them, and eventually, if you see you can't, you have to protect yourself. You have to give yourself some time, and that's the point that I was trying to get to. It's just, you have to live your life. You have to have normal life. You have to have fun. You have to go to concerts. You have to go to shows. You have to gather with your friends. You have to talk about stuff. You have to share the pain. You have to be surrounded by people. This is not the way you do it on your Instagram. Just sharing stories every day, sad news. read it somewhere, you repost it, which is good. Yeah, we have to.
But
We have
Paymon,
to.
is it a matter of respect sometimes? I mean, if you know,
Definitely.
if four people are executed by this horrendous regime today, does it feel odd to go out tonight and dance to a DJ and you know, get drunk and party?
Uh, I think that this depends on, like, I think different cultures process the pain differently. Like, uh, I think in our culture is the mourning
Mm-hmm.
culture. Even before Islam, it was Sugesi Avashan. It was like it's all about mourning. It's been like that for a long time.
Right, right.
Some other cultures, they get, when tragic things happen, they dance, they party, they drink. They just want to keep the spirit levels high, you know, as the song. I don't know. I was quoting from a song that I don't remember, but it's up to us. I mean, but I think what we've been doing is of no use. Like attacking other people, and one thing is a matter of respect. Of course, you have to respect the victims, but if you push yourself to an angle, to an edge, that you become like a useless human being because you're so sad, you're so frustrated, you feel so lonely and desperate and powerless. What's the use of it?
Did it hurt you when some of your own fans were upset at you for playing gigs?
I mean, more than hurting, no. Everybody was still. I mean, everybody's so aggressive these days, and it's understandable. You know, we all wanna, we all, we all have this rage because of all the shit that's been happening to us. So we just wanna get it out of our system somehow. So I really tried not to react like in an unpolite way. So I just said, yeah, this is your opinion, I respect it, but I really think even going to discos and dance, I mean, I know my friends in Iran were gathering together over the past few months, and on the weekends they tried to escape from this harsh reality they're surrounded by and have a moment of peace and good time. And it's understandable. I mean, that's it's a matter of survival also. You should somehow protect your mind and your soul. It's not, and yeah, I mean, for me it's been the same. But besides all this, I think when you're an artist and you have the responsibility to I mean, use your events, use your shows and expositions, and just to create, like, to raise a little bit of awareness. I'm not saying to dedicate the whole content to, because sometimes it's impossible. Like, I cannot dedicate my whole album to this movement, you know, because I'm an artist. I've been working on that album for 4 years. It's not, for me, it's not possible to make every track of that album about this movement. But you can do small portions. I mean, but the important thing is just like when you have the chance, when you have a platform, when you're on the stage, and we're all outside Iran, and people, non-Iranian people, come to your show. Even if you manage to, like, inform one of them about what's been going on in Iran, I think you've done your job. You know,
that's a big part of it. What you can do at those events. There's two things that, I mean, the main thing that I always repeat. People who listen to this program have heard me say this 50 times now. But the thing that I don't appreciate is the hypocrisy within the community, whereby it's the artists that have to bear the brunt of taking responsibility for the revolution. So no one seems to be saying you can't be a dentist or stop being an engineer because the revolution's going on. But if you're a filmmaker, or if you're a performer, a dancer, or if you're a singer, you're not supposed to be on stage. I mean, this has changed, as you say, now. But that type of hypocrisy, not to mention that people in the Iranian community were saying, you shouldn't be playing a gig right now, but then they would go and see Bruce Springsteen. It's like we can go to concerts of non-Iranians, but we can't see, which is just insane, right? I mean, what are we getting at here? So
yeah, you just nailed it for me, Touche. Like that's what I've been trying to say. All my posts on this matter have been about this hypocrisy, like. It's just the culture of like the double life, because we're used to it. We're used to have a double life, and we keep doing the same thing. People were posting close friends stories at some point, and they were having parties, and then you would see a normal post about. I mean, just like why would you want to do that? Who are you trying to deceive? Like this is not respect for me. This is not a matter of respect, to be honest. Like it's just, it's what you just said. Hypocrisy. It's just a lack of, it's like lack of coherency with yourself, just because you are so scared. We are all so scared to be judged by by the others. Yeah.
It's always good to talk to you, sir, and I'm excited about this new record that you have coming out April 7th. So you have a brand new, the album's coming out when? In the late April or something, right?
Yeah. So, the first single is going to be out on April 7th.
And we're going to play. Now you've told me that, you sent us the song and I got all excited because I actually love this song. And then you texted me and said, but don't play the whole thing. See, this is called a tease.
Let's keep it that way.
So it's called Man, like me. This is your brand new single. It's coming out April 7th. We're going to play a little bit of it. We won't play the whole thing, just to go out. What can you tell us about this, Peyman?
So this is the first track of this concept album that I made, which is about this character that goes through different phases of a relationship. He's a serial monogamist. I mean, I talked about it in the last interview as well. This is the first phase when he's like the center of his own universe. It's about his ego, but the ego is taken as the human being's ego, not the person's ego. And human being's ego as a species, like the things that we've been doing to the planet, to the environment, to our home, to the earth, and like in the name of religion, in the name of politics, in the name of whatever, but somehow we failed to protect this environment. Yeah, it's a very atheist kind of song, I'd say, like very anti-religion.
Well, I look forward to people hearing the whole song. We'll play a bit of it now. It's great work, and it's always good to talk to you. Thank you for doing this. Khasta namashi, and I hope to see you soon. I know you got, there's a gig coming up in San Francisco.
And there's one before in Brussels. It's a charity event, actually, for Women Life Freedom. We are collecting money for all the girls that have lost one of their eyes, or both of them, in the shootings. So I'm dedicating all the income of that concert.
When is that?
It's on March 23rd in Brussels.
And when is the San Francisco show, for those listening there?
San Francisco is April 7th.
Okay.
At DNA Law.
Okay. Does it make any sense to fly from Brussels and play one show in San Francisco? Have you thought maybe about adding an LA show, maybe go up north to Sacramento?
I do have other production works, so I have to take care of. So it's for a good cause.
Okay.
It's justified.
Good to talk to you. Take care of yourself and hope to see you soon.
Same here, man. Same here. Thanks, bro.
Bye-bye. That's Paymon Salimi in Brussels. And from his new record that comes out in late April, this is a brand new single that comes out on April 7th. Take a listen to a little bit of the song Man.
از همه بهتریم، از همه سرتریم، بلای جان ما شد این قشر خاکستری، پرچم افتخار بر کره ما زدیم، صحبت دل که شد دلو به خواب زدیم. بدون تو چجوری سر کنم دنیای تناقض حرف کیو باور کنم اشرف مخلوقات این همه معلومات پیله تنهایی تو عصر ارتباطات رحمی نکرده ایم به هم نوعان خود انسان به بند کشیم حیوان که جای خود بگو من بدون تو چجوری سر کنم دنیای تناقض حرف کیو باور کنم اسیری تو چنگ یه مش قدرت طلب دیگه مهم نیست من که گذشته آب از سرم Those who we need in churches.
There you go. Little advanced taste of the brand new single from Peyman Salimi, Man. It's coming out on April 7th. This is full time for Rook for today. Thank you to Paymon, Hushang, Mahsa. Thank you to the Rook team, Roham, KNZ, Anahita, Parisa, Pega, Merdad. Our website, rookmedia.com, is where you can find everything Rook related. Thank you to all of you out there for supporting us and sharing our content. Please subscribe if you've not done so already. Find me on Instagram at Jian Ghomeshi. Mizun Bashin.
نفسی واپسی بر زخم او زنی